Hi, all. The plenary is over, so they're making their way up. Hopefully within the next 5 minutes we should be able to start. All right. A very good afternoon to media colleagues here in Busan and everybody watching online. Welcome to this media briefing on the opening day of the 5th session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, INC5, to develop an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. My name is Keisha Rukikaire. I work with UNEP Communications and I will be moderating this briefing. So on our panel today we have the chair of the INC, Ambassador Luis Vayas Valdivieso. We have Ms. Inge Andersen, who is the Executive Director of UNEP. We have Ms. Han Min Young, Director General for Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Scientific Affairs for our host Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And Ms. Jyoti Mathur-Filipp, who is the Executive Secretary of the INC. Now before we get to our speakers, I'll just run through a little bit of housekeeping. We have about 45 minutes available, and we hope to use most of that, half that time for questions. The session is being live streamed on UN Web TV, and simultaneous Korean interpretation is available. If you require it, you have headsets on your seats. Korean is channel 1 and English is channel 2. For media with questions, once we move to the Q&A portion of the briefing, once I call on you, before you ask your question, please state your name and the media outlet you represent. If you are not a media of the member, you're free to observe the press briefing, but questions should please be limited to journalists. Our first speaker this afternoon is Ms. Inge Andersen, Executive Director of UNEP. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. As I said in the opening, it's been 1,000 days since UNEA greenlit these negotiations, and here we are. We understand, however, that some plastics remain in the environment for thousands of years too and decompose, and when they do so, they nevertheless remain as smaller articles where they persist, pervade, and pollute. And that pollution is harming our natural systems on which we all depend, making it much harder to adapt to climate change and very likely, indeed, harming human health. So here in Busan, at this INC5, and we extend our appreciation to the Korean government and Korean people and people of Busan for welcoming us so warmly. Here in Busan, INC members now have a real chance to get something done about this by gaveling under the leadership of our chair and instrument that represents an ambitious starting point to end plastic pollution. And as I've said this morning, to get there, members who are parties to the negotiations will need to find agreement on many provisions, which I believe we can split into 3 categories. I mentioned that as well. And the first category are these provisions that are standard. We see them in many other treaties. They're not surprising. They deal with implementation and compliance, national plans, reporting, effective evaluation and monitoring. I'm encouraging member states simply to just gavel those. In the second category, yes, are provisions around which there is some convergence, but there are also more conversations to be had, and the chair has offered a helpful paper to guide negotiations. That deals with issues such as product design, emissions and releases, waste management, and legacy pollution, as well as just transitions. Now, I am suggesting that once we get over the introductory session, which we're still dealing with, negotiators should be able to make rapid progress on these provisions. And in the third category are the more difficult issues that will require significant work to resolve. The first of these unresolved issues is around plastic products and chemicals. You may have heard some of those discussions this morning. It's clear, however, I say, that there are chemicals that we don't want around or in people, let alone babies and children, and near to our food or to our bodies. And so let's begin with those that we clearly understand can be putting people at risk. And negotiators, I also say, can we encourage that they look at specific plastic items that we can live without. And beginning, obviously, with single-use and short-lived and quote-unquote unnecessary plastics, and then consider alternatives. The second unresolved issue is the issue around supply, and here I'm suggesting that negotiators take inspiration and, frankly, instructions from the United Nations Environmental Assembly resolution that speaks to sustainable production and consumption, which is language that we all understand from SDG 12. And the third item deals around finance. Let me just be very clear, in case some journalists come straight from Baku. that we are negotiating a treaty for the ages. It has to last. Therefore, this is not obviously about numbers. It is, however, about a mechanism that needs to be established. Again, I'm encouraging that parties who are negotiating take instructions and or enlightenment from the UNEA resolution, which speaks to a dedicated fund that needs to be established, possibly a dedicated multilateral fund. And I'm asking that the negotiators use that language and outline the broad contours of how this mechanism will work. I don't expect, as you've seen from this morning, necessarily that negotiations will be easy, but I understand that every country is here in good faith. That's how we operate in the United Nations. And I understand that there is a great public desire and political desire across the world to get this done. And that's urgent and important, and we do so is get a strong start without lowering the bar so that the treaty could potentially become meaningless. Now, the eyes of the world is on this spot in Korea, Busan, and many observers and stakeholders are here, which will help shine a light. And as I've said, we see scientists, indigenous people, health workers, civil society, business, and many more. And they're watching and engaging and obviously expecting us to deliver. I hand it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Executive Director. Our next speaker is Ambassador Vayas, Chair of the INC. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all. And it's so nice to see you here. First of all, also my gratitude to the Republic of Korea, to the people of Busan and the Republic of Korea and the government of the Republic of Korea for hosting us here in this beautiful city, Busan. It's my actually third time here in Busan. I hope I will have time to enjoy, as I have enjoyed the times before, but yes, now we are here in our negotiations. I thank you for being here today, and I would like to reflect on the significance of our work at this fifth session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to Combat Plastic Pollution. This session represents a pivotal opportunity for us to tackle one of the most urgent global environmental crises of our time, plastic pollution. The scope of our challenges is staggering. Plastic waste is about 80% of all marine pollution, with an estimate of 8 to 10 million metric tons entering the oceans annually. Global plastic production has soared from 2.3 million tons in 1950 to 448 million tons by 2015. And if current trends persist, is expected to double by 2050. This isn't just a matter of environmental degradation. The economic costs are profound, with ocean plastic pollution imposing an estimated annual burden of $2.5 trillion of the global economy. The impacts of human health are equally alarming, with microplastics detected in various human organs, raising concerns about serious health risks, including cancer and reproductive issues. These numbers highlight why this treaty is essential. It is so important, not just for protecting our planet, but for safeguarding human health, supporting sustainable economy development, and promoting innovation in the plastic industry. This global crisis demands a global solution, which is why we are here in Busan today, and we will be working this week. The INC Treaty we are negotiating has three key goals. First, safeguarding the environment. Second, protecting human health. And third, ensuring sustainable economic progress. It is a treaty that aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals, offering opportunities for innovation, job creation, and economic stability while addressing plastics' environmental and health impacts. Importantly, it is also aiming to protect the most vulnerable among us, women, children, indigenous communities, and those in coastal and risk areas by addressing the damaging effects, for example, of toxic chemicals in plastics that contribute to diseases and disorders. This is a member-driven negotiation. However, we are working hand by hand with UNEP, and I thank you very much to the Executive Director for all the extraordinary work from UNEP and also from the Executive Secretary and from Jyoti, Mathur-Filipp, and all the team in the Secretariat. And also we work with environmental organizations, international agencies, scientific community, private sector, civil society, academia, NGOs are here with us, continuing and contributing with their insights, evidence, and ideas. They have contributed with their views to governments since our INC process started on the first day. Our discussions have been enriched by diverse perspectives and grounded in the realities faced by communities worldwide. We all have a role as negotiators, individuals and consumers. Plastic pollution affects all of us, and we each have a stake in its solutions. As governments, we are tasked with creating a treaty that transcends borders and sets a new standard for global cooperation. Our responsibility is to ensure this treaty becomes a transformative tool to end plastic pollution, and we are working to do so. Achieving consensus will require relentless effort, bold political will, and a shared commitment to the mandate established 2.5 years ago in UNEA 5.2. Together, I'm optimistic that we can craft a treaty that delivers real change, protects the planet, and secures a healthier and more sustainable future for all of us. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Next, representing our very gracious host country, is Ms. Han Min-young, Director General for Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Scientific Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon. It's my great privilege to welcome you all to the 5th session of Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee meeting in Busan, Republic of Korea. As the host country, we are truly honored to serve as the venue for these critical discussions. As a strong supporter of multilateralism, the Republic of Korea has been committed to the establishment of an international instrument to tackle plastic pollution since the beginning of this process, starting from the 5th session of UN Environment Assembly, UNEA 5. We have carefully reflected on the areas where Korea can make meaningful contributions to this process. Hosting the INC 5 is a deliberate decision to demonstrate our such commitment. Building on our extensive experience of hosting prestigious international conferences, we are dedicated to facilitating effective and productive negotiations among all delegates over the next 7 days, working toward an ultimate goal of concluding the treaty here in Busan. Since this is the final round of negotiation, we have prepared the meeting spaces with maximum flexibility to enable all delegates, observers, and media to engage productively and effectively and to facilitate active formal and informal discussions. As we gather here, we are reminded of the far-reaching implications of what we can achieve here for our collective future. Korea remains steadfast in its commitment to a legally binding agreement that addresses the full life cycle of plastic from production and consumption to waste management. Korea is ready to play a constructive role in the negotiations, leveraging our experience in waste management policies and advanced resource circulation system. Differences in views still remain on key issues, including plastic production, control of plastic products and chemicals, and the financial mechanism, among other things. This is no small task, and it's only through hard work, mutual hard work, mutual respect, and unwavering determination that will achieve our goal. Korea stands ready to work with all member states to build bridges, to narrow gaps, and foster consensus. We are also hosting various side events under the theme of Rethinking Plastic Life at the second exhibition center of BEXCO here. We hope this will be a forum where multi-stakeholders actively communicate their insights and ideas on resource circulation policies and technologies. Korea will facilitate the discussion by sharing our expertise and experience in relevant areas such as the extended producer responsibility system, which has been in place for more than 20 years in Korea. Tackling global plastic pollution is a shared responsibility that humanity can no longer afford to delay. I hope INC 5 will serve as a milestone achieving this historic outcome here in Busan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General. And our final speaker is the Executive Secretary of the INC Secretariat, Ms. Jyoti Mathur-Filipp. Thank you.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we open the fifth session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution. First, I would like also to extend my deepest gratitude to the Republic of Korea for hosting this session, and to Ms. Han, who we have worked with very diligently over the last 1 year to make sure that we get here, and also to the city of Busan for its warm and gracious welcome. This hospitality, I'm sure, will inspire us to embark on this week of historical negotiations with a good conclusion. Since the adoption of the UNEA Resolution 514 in 2022, courage and determination and the strong community we have built have carried us to this pivotal moment. In just 2 ambitious years, we have made remarkable progress, and I'm confident that these same qualities will guide us as we work together here in Busan. The forecasted attendance at this session is remarkable and also inspiring. More than 3,800 participants have registered, and a diversity of views and voices are represented here from 177 countries and over 600 observer organizations, and of course yourselves, with such impressive media attention highlighting the shared responsibility we all have to find solutions. The live schedule is available on the INC website, presenting the plenary sessions and contact groups and other important updates and notifications. Accessibility for all stakeholders remains at the core of our efforts, including live streaming of the plenary and multilingual interpretation in all 6 UN languages, ensuring that our audience around the world can follow this process. In addition, the session's documents will continually be updated and available on the INC website. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the leadership of the INC chair, who has guided and supported us since taking the responsibility at INC 3 in Nairobi a year ago. As always, I and my team in the INC Secretariat are here to support every step of the way, and we have assembled an experienced team from across the UN Environment Programme and multilateral environmental agreements to ensure that this session is productive, inclusive, and transparent. This is a defining moment in our journey, and the expectations for this session are very high, and together we will work to meet these expectations with focus, collaboration and ambition. And as the Executive Director and the Chair have said, let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary, and thank you to our panelists. So we'll move swiftly on to the Q&A portion of the briefing. Please walk over to the mic if you have a question. The mics are in the aisle. If you have a mobility challenge, you might be able to have a... Yes, we might be able to. Oh, you'll take the mics to them? Okay, sure. All right, great. There we go. So just raise your hand. Let's see. We have this gentleman over here.
Thank you. I am Seung-Sub Song, a journalist from the Asia Business Daily. It is truly meaningful to witness the progression of the Plastics Reduction Treaty here in Korea. I would like to direct my question to the chair, and I will ask them in Korean.
This should be said.
주최국인 한국이 플라스틱 협약에 어떤 자세로 임하는지, 그리고 한국의 플라스틱 정책에 대해서 어떻게 생각하는지 질문하고 싶습니다. 한국은 이번 협상에서 플라스틱 원료 생산 감축 의지를 적극적으로 드러내고 있다고 평가하시는지, 아니면 한국의 역할은 중재자에 가깝다고 평가하시는지 궁금하고요. 두 번째로, 한국의 환경부는 플라스틱 소비에 있어서 강제적인 방식이 아닌 자율적인 방식으로 감축해야 한다는 입장을 계속 드러내고 있습니다. 이렇게 플라스틱을 자율적으로 줄여나가야 한다는 정부의 정책에 대해서 어떻게 평가하십니까? 감사합니다.
I thank you very much for your question. Well, we have an ongoing negotiation, and what I can say is that Korea, the Republic of Korea, is doing a wonderful job here, hosting us here in Busan. But also, during the whole process, the Republic of Korea also has been with active role and very constructive role. Also, with the ambitions to get a treaty that will be effective to end and combat and end plastic pollution. I admire also the whole projects and processes that are going on in the Republic of Korea too that I have seen, and I actually congratulate for what they are doing in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This lady over here, and then the one behind there.
Thank you. Hi, Jessica from Eco Business. Inga has mentioned the 3 points that the negotiators should focus on, but on production cuts, that's been the most divisive, and we've seen some interventions from Saudi Arabia and Russia this morning that prove that it might be quite difficult. So can we get some views from Inga and the INC chair on how you expect to resolve this issue? Thanks.
So this Inger will tell you then. No, essentially, as I said, I think it's very important to go back to the UNEA resolution. This was a hard-fought-for language, but it is accepted language by all member states. And that means speaking to the elements that are today in SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goal 12, which speaks to the sustainability of our production and consumption on everything, extractives, agriculture, forestry, as well as plastics, but I mean, it doesn't name them specifically, but that's obviously the intent. And I think that the negotiators back at UNEA 5 very cleverly took that language because it speaks to consumption and production. Obviously, what we see today is unsustainable because much of it ends up in our river and our oceans. That was the wisdom and the insight that they had back in Nairobi. And that wisdom and insight still prevails. And so how is it then that we will deal with that, which no one wants in our rivers and oceans and soils and what have you, and indeed in our bodies? That's the question. Which is why I have consistently said, let's start with a focus on that which ends up in the environment. Let's consider what that is. And let's start with a focus on that which we know exposes us to chemicals. This has been very clearly what I said in my opening speech, and I've said it for 2 years. There are many other things we can begin to look at, the right to repair, all of those other elements that I think we all understand, but what ends up in the environment, it has to be our primary purpose within the life cycle approach. If that is the key, and if there are elements that we understand, articles that we understand are frankly not needed, that would be a good place to start. If we understand that there are chemicals that frankly we should not put next to in the diapers of our babies, or in the cosmetics or next to the food that we are going to ingest. Let's start there. And then let us establish a process, as we well know in UNEP under all of our environmental agreements, for how we can in future identify other things that we can quote-unquote list. That is the process by which I hope that member states will proceed, and that is indeed what the chair has also engaged in many discussions on similarly. The UNEA resolution is deeper and wider than maybe member states currently recall, so I keep going back to that. That was 10 days of hard negotiations in C2 and months of negotiations prior to UNEA, and it should serve as a basis. We are not starting from scratch. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Anybody else on the panel wanted to add?
Okay, thank you. No, just, well, the Executive Director has mentioned important to recall Resolution 514 from UNEA 5.2 and the whole life cycle. We are working, we have a mandate also to work on the whole life cycle of plastics, and we are doing so. And also important to underline that, again, you know, in this negotiation, what is important is also, and me as a chair, to give the space also to the members to have that constructive negotiation that we are looking for. I am optimistic. I can see that we have that space, we have created a space, and we have to go forward and also get an agreement here for the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one there, and then we can go to this gentleman over there after that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jess Staffenberg, and I work for Source Material, which is an investigative newsroom, and we partner with bigger media partners. This is a question for Inge. In yesterday's meeting, one of the questions was around cuts to plastic production, which is obviously a big part of the whole session, the whole treaty, because of the projected amount of plastic by 2050, etc. An NGO alleged that, Inge, you'd been talking to a number of countries and had pressured them to back down on some of their production-related demands. When you were asked that, you answered to say that you'd met with delegates, but you didn't clarify that you hadn't pressured them to reduce plastic production cuts. Could you clarify that now, please?
I've met, as I said yesterday, and you can ask me again tomorrow, and you'll get the same response. I've met with many people from delegations, from NGOs, from business, from indigenous people. I'll continue to do so. I will engage with them to move them under the big tent that the chair has constructed. That big tent is there in the form of the non-paper. That's my job, and that's what I do. Thank you.
Hello, this is Deok-hyun Hwang from News One. I'm speaking a question in Korean. 이번 회의가 시작 부분이긴 하지만 의미 있는 성안에 도달하지 못할 것이라는 말이 벌써부터 나오고 있습니다. 혹시 그렇게 된다면 내년 외교전권 회의 전에 소회의 등 추가 회의를 할 가능성이 있는지 궁금합니다. 또한 치열한 논의를 하겠지만 구체적이고 전향적인 성안을 하길 원하는지 아니면 선언적이라도 모두가 참여할 수 있는 좀 더 제너럴한 성안을 원하는지 궁금합니다.
I thank you very much for your question too. I'm confident that we will reach an agreement here in Busan for the 1st of December. And I'm confident that that text that we will agree with the member states here in Busan will give us the path to combat and to end plastic pollution with credible rules. You have to consider that this will be a living document. We need to keep this convention, the future treaty, the future convention alive, strengthened in the future, getting stronger and stronger. We have heard scientific evidence, scientific data, and we need also from the science, from academia, also solutions and possible solutions. And that develops day by day. That we will receive, and we will keep receiving more information, more data, more also solutions to what we are facing with this crisis. I'm confident that we will finish here. I'm confident that we will have a treaty or text for a future treaty here at the end of Busan, of our session in Busan. Thank you.
May I just add that I think that I completely want to endorse what the chair has said. And we are only in the first few hours, so let's not discard things before we get into the 63 hours that the chair counts, plus some night hours maybe. And obviously, once the treaty text is agreed, it is a treaty text that will stand and will stand the test of time. The way that the multilateral environmental agreements work is, of course, that they're not changed, but that each COP adds dimensions of an asks, and I think that's what the chair intended to say, that the document makes the base, but as you know, each COP will add other demands, other elements, and that's how it works. We at UNEP are the proud host to 17 conventions, most of them you will know, and many of them, well, some of them are 50 years old, others are younger, but the point is they act as the initial document acts as the final, the first initial base text to start the work, and then COPs add additional requirements as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. This gentleman over here first, and then the lady on the same row.
Mathur-Filipp, Climate Home News. You've underlined, this is for the INC chair, you've underlined many times how the time here is very limited, and you proposed your non-paper as a basis to fast-track negotiations. Many countries rejected that approach, the non-paper this morning. How big of a setback is this for the negotiations, and what is the way forward you propose? And if I may, a question for the executive director as well. You were talking about